Most people think truck driving is
watching आ
just long
जानी
roads and quiet nights. Miles of empty
100
highway,
200
the
250
sound of the
300
engine, nothing but
500
darkness stretching out
अभी
ahead.
watching आ
But
जानी
truckers know something most people don't.
करते
When you spend
करते
enough nights alone on the
एक
road,
टाइम
you
पे
start noticing things.
5,000 7,000
Figures
की watching
standing where no one should be.
इतनी ज़्यादा लोग
Headlights that
तक
follow
रहे
you
हो
for
सामने
miles. Voices on the
इतना
radio
ज़्यादा
when no
वास्ट
one
टाइम
is
ਤੁਹਾਡਾ
transmitting.
ਇਕੱਠਾ होगा
And sometimes you
ठीक है
see something in your mirrors that shouldn't exist at all. The stories in this video were shared by truck drivers who experienced something they still can't explain. 4 different highways. 4
ਕੀ ਹੋਣਾ
different
ਪਤਾ ਨਹੀਂ
drivers. 4 nights that never felt
ਆਮ
normal.
ਰੂਟੀਨ ਕਦੀ ਲਾਈਵ ਆਇਆ
So if you're driving tonight,
ਹਾਂ
you might want to check the
ਆਂਦੇ
mirrors.
ਦੋ ਹੋ ਗਏ
Because the road behind you might tell you.
ਆਪਣੀ ਵੀਡੀਓ ਹੋਵੇ ਨਾ ਫਿਰ ਨਹੀਂ ਰਹਿਣਾ ਉਹ ਨਹੀਂ ਹੋਣਾ
ਨਹੀਂ ਉਹ ਤਾਂ ਸਾਹਮਣੇ ਆਪ ਤੁਸੀਂ
Driving
ਸਾਹਮਣੇ
trucks
ਆ
for
ਕੇ
almost 15 years, and I've seen a
ਨਹੀਂ
lot of
ਮਤਲਬ
strange
ਆਪਣੀ
things on the
ਪਹਿਲਾਂ
road.
ਤੁਸੀਂ
Most of them have
ਆ ਕੇ
explanations.
ਅਟੈਂਡ ਕਰਿਓ ਨਾ ਮੇਰੀ ਲਾਈਵ
People get tired. Your mind fills
ਨਹੀਂ
in
ਮੈਂ ਆਪੇ
shapes
ਲਾਈ
in the
ਜਾਣਾ
darkness.
ਆਏ
Shadows look like people. Road signs flash. Weird. When your headlights hit them just right. That's what I told myself the night this happened. I was driving through northern Arizona around 3 a.m.
ਆਵਾਜ਼ ਵੀ ਲਾਈ ਹੋਈ
Long empty highway. No towns. 4 miles.
ਸਾਡੇ ਦਾ ਤਰੀਕਾ ਮੈਂ ਤੱਕ
Just as it. The occasional truck passing in the opposite lane. My delivery schedule was tight, so I was trying to push through the night. About halfway through that stretch, I noticed someone standing on the side of the road. A woman. She was standing right near the edge of the shoulder, facing the highway. At first, I thought maybe her car had broken down somewhere nearby. But as I got closer, I noticed something strange. There wasn't a car. No headlights, no hazard lights, nothing parked anywhere nearby. Just her, standing there. It was freezing outside that night, and she was wearing what looked like a thin white dress. No jacket, no shoes. That alone made me slow down. I rolled my window down slightly and leaned toward the passenger side. Hey, you need help? She didn't move, didn't wave, didn't look at me. Just stood there facing the road. I drove past her slowly, watching in the mirror, and that's when she turned her head. Slowly. Not toward the truck. Toward the road behind me, like she was watching something following me that gave me a strange feeling. But I kept driving. About 10 minutes later, I started feeling uneasy. Not scared. Exactly. Just that weird feeling like someone is watching you. So I checked the passenger side mirror, and that's when I saw her again, standing on the shoulder of the road. Behind my truck. The same woman. Same white dress. Same still posture. That made absolutely no sense. I had driven at least 10 miles since I passed her. There's no way she could have walked that far, that fast. I blinked and looked again. She was still there, standing perfectly still on the shoulder. Watching the truck, I told myself it had to be someone else. Maybe another person on the road. But then, something else happened. I checked the mirror again a few seconds later.
26 लोग
She was closer. Much closer. Now, standing near the back of the trailer, but I never saw her
मैं
walk.
इंग्लिश कंटेंट बनाता हूँ
Never saw her move. She was just suddenly closer. That's when I started feeling genuinely uneasy. I turned my attention back to the road and tried to ignore it. But a few seconds later, something moved inside the cab. On the passenger side, I slowly turned my head, and my heart nearly stopped. She was sitting in the passenger seat, perfectly still, looking straight ahead through the windshield. I slammed the brakes instinctively. The truck skidded slightly before stopping on the shoulder. When I turned again, the seat was empty. No one there. The door was still locked. I sat there breathing heavily for a minute, trying to calm down. Finally, I stepped out of the truck to check around it. The highway was empty. Silent. No cars. No people. Just wind blowing across the desert. I was about to climb back into the cab when I noticed something on the passenger window. A handprint pressed against the glass from the inside. And beneath it, 4 long streaks, like fingernails dragging slowly down the window. I got back into the truck and drove until sunrise. I didn't stop anywhere after that. But here's the part that still bothers me. Every once in a while, when I'm driving alone at night, I check the passenger seat, just to make sure it's still empty. because sometimes I swear I can hear someone breathing beside me. I've been driving trucks long enough to know that the road can mess with your head. When you spend 12 or 14 hours alone in a cab, staring at the same dark highway, your mind starts playing tricks on you. At least, that's what I used to believe. This happened about 4 years ago during a winter haul through Montana. It was around 2:40 in the morning. Snow had been falling lightly for hours, and the highway was nearly empty. My headlights were the only thing lighting the road for miles. If you've ever driven through Montana at night, you know how quiet it gets. No towns, no traffic. Just miles of dark forest and frozen fields. I had just crossed a long stretch of highway when I noticed something strange ahead. There was a truck parked on the shoulder. That wasn't unusual. Drivers pull over all the time to rest or check their load. But the way this truck was parked caught my attention. It was sitting perfectly straight on the shoulder. Engine off, lights off. No hazard lights, just a dark shape sitting in the snow. As I got closer, I noticed something else. The driver door was open, wide open. That made me slow down. Usually when a truck stops like that, it means something is wrong. A breakdown, maybe. I rolled past slowly and looked over. The cab was empty, no driver, no movement, just the door hanging open in the cold wind. For a second, I considered stopping to check if someone needed help, but something about the whole thing felt off. There were no footprints in the snow around the truck, not leading away from it, not leading toward it. Just untouched snow everywhere except the tire tracks. I kept driving. About 10 minutes later, I checked my mirrors out of habit, and that's when I saw headlights behind me. 2 bright lights coming up the road. I figured it was another truck catching up. But the strange part was the speed. The headlights were gaining on me way too fast. Within seconds, they were right behind my trailer. So I moved slightly toward the right lane to let them pass. But they didn't pass. They stayed behind me. Close. Too close. I could see the glow of the lights reflecting off the back of my trailer, but I still couldn't see the truck itself. Just the lights. It reminded me of something. Something I didn't want to think about. The parked truck. The one with the open door. I checked the mirror again, and my stomach dropped. Because the headlights behind me looked exactly like the ones on that parked truck. Same height, same spacing, but that truck had been sitting on the shoulder with the engine off. I knew what I saw. Still, I tried to stay calm. Maybe another truck just happened to have similar lights. But then, something else happened. The headlights behind me slowly moved closer, until they were almost touching the trailer. I grabbed the radio. Driver behind me, back it up a little. No response, just static. The lights stayed there. So I slowed down slightly, and that's when the headlights disappeared. Not faded, not turned away. Just gone. Like someone switched them off instantly. I checked every mirror. The road behind me was empty, completely empty. No truck, no lights, nothing. That was enough for me. I kept driving another 20 miles until I reached a truck stop. When I pulled into the lot, I shut the engine down and stepped out to check the trailer. Snow had been falling the whole time. The ground was covered. I walked around the truck slowly. Everything looked normal. Then I got to the back of the trailer, and I noticed something in the snow. Fresh tire tracks. 2 lines, running directly behind my truck, stopping about 10 feet from the trailer. But the strange thing was, they didn't lead anywhere. There were no tracks behind them. No tracks turning away. Just 2 lines in the snow that appeared suddenly and ended right behind my truck, like something had been following me, without ever touching the road. I've been driving long haul for almost a decade. If you ask most truckers, they'll tell you the same thing. The highways at night are peaceful, quiet, sometimes even relaxing. But there's one stretch of road in Nevada I refuse to drive anymore. It was around 3:10 in the morning when it happened. I had been on the road for about 6 hours, hauling a dry load. Toward Utah, the highway was empty 4 miles. Just desert on both sides and the occasional reflective sign flashing in the headlights. No towns, no traffic. Just the road. I remember checking the clock, because I was getting tired. That's when I saw someone standing on the shoulder ahead. A person. Just standing there. At first I thought maybe it was another driver who had broken down. It happens sometimes out there. But the closer I got, the stranger it looked. They weren't waving for help. They weren't moving at all, just standing perfectly still, facing the road. You see a lot of weird things driving overnight, but people standing alone in the middle of nowhere at 3 a.m. usually means something's wrong. So I slowed down. As my headlights hit them fully, I realized it was a woman, long dark hair, thin jacket, standing barefoot on the gravel shoulder. That alone made no sense. It was freezing outside. I rolled the truck a little slower and cracked my window. "Hey, you need help?" No response. She didn't move, didn't look at me, just kept facing the highway like she was waiting for something. That gave me a bad feeling, so I kept rolling past her. But as my trailer passed, I checked the side mirror. She was gone. Not walking away. Not moving into the desert. Just gone. I remember actually leaning forward in the seat trying to see better. The shoulder was empty. Completely empty. That should have been the end of it. But about 10 minutes later, something else happened. I looked down the highway ahead and saw a figure standing in the distance. Same shape, same long hair, standing on the shoulder again. At first I thought it had to be someone else, but the closer I got, the more it looked exactly the same. Same jacket, same posture, same stillness. Standing there waiting, I slowed down again. This time I didn't roll the window down. I just drove past, and just like before, when I checked the mirror, she was gone. I told myself I was just tired. Maybe my brain was playing tricks on me. Night driving can do that sometimes. But about 20 minutes later, I reached a small rest stop. One of those quiet ones with just a couple lights and a vending machine. I pulled in to stretch my legs. The place was empty. No cars. No other trucks. Just the wind blowing across the parking lot. I shut off the engine and sat there for a minute before stepping out. That's when I noticed something strange. There were footprints in the gravel near my truck. Barefoot prints, walking toward the passenger side of my cab. I slowly walked around the truck to look. The footprints stopped right next to the door, like someone had stood there, waiting. I climbed back inside immediately and locked both doors, and that's when I saw it. On the passenger side mirror, a faint handprint, pressed against the glass from the outside. But the strange thing is, I never heard anyone walk up to the truck, and the gravel around me was completely silent. Sometimes when I drive at night now, I still check the side mirror more than I should, just to make sure no one is standing next to the truck. Because out there on those empty highways, you don't always see who's walking beside you. Those were 3 trucker horror stories shared by drivers who experienced something they still can't explain. And the strange thing about stories like these is they always happen when the road is empty. Late at night, miles from the nearest town, with no one around to see what really happened. Before you leave, I'm curious about something. Where are you watching this video from? And what time is it there right now? Let me know in the comments. I always like seeing how far these stories travel. And if you enjoy realistic horror stories like these, make sure you like the video and subscribe for more true scary stories every week. Because the next story might happen somewhere near you. Until next time, stay safe on the road. I didn't believe in weird stories about Walmart until the last week I worked there. I was on overnight maintenance, basically the guy who cleaned floors, emptied trash, and fixed small things, while the rest of the crew stocked shelves. Most nights were boring. The store closed at midnight, and by 2 a.m., the place felt almost empty. Just the NG lights and long, quiet aisles. That night, I was cleaning the back of the store near the garden center. If you've ever been in a Walmart at night, The garden area is the darkest part of the building. Most of the lights stay off because no one shops there overnight. I was pushing the floor machine slowly down the aisle when I noticed something strange. The automatic doors to the garden exit were open. They're not supposed to open after the store closes. They only open if someone walks up to them. I stopped the machine and walked closer. Outside it was completely dark. No cars. No people. Just the parking lot lights in the distance. I figured maybe security had stepped outside earlier, so I hit the button to close the doors. Taste lead shut, I went back to cleaning. Maybe 3 minutes later, I heard the doors open again. That soft sliding sound echoed across the garden section. I turned around. The doors were open, but there was no one there. Just darkness outside. That gave me a weird feeling. Like when your brain tells you something isn't right, but you can't explain why. I walked over again and looked outside. Still nothing. No movement. No sound. I stepped back inside and the doors closed automatically. I decided to ignore it and finish my job. About 10 minutes later, I heard footsteps behind me. Slow ones. Walking across the concrete floor of the garden center. I assumed it was security doing a patrol, so I kept cleaning. But the footsteps stopped right behind me. Completely silent. I turned around. No one was there. The entire garden center was empty. Just rows of fertilizer bags and plant shelves. I stood there for a second, trying to calm down. Then I noticed something that made my stomach drop. The automatic doors were open again, but this time, they were opening and closing. Slowly. Over and over. Like something was standing right in front of him, triggering the sensor. But I couldn't see anyone. I grabbed my radio and asked security if they were in garden. They said no, they were on the other side of the building. I told them the doors kept opening by themselves. They sight. They D. Check the cameras. While I waited, the doors stopped moving. They stayed closed. Everything went quiet again. 2. Kiai. Then I heard something else. Footsteps. Walking down the main garden aisle. Coming toward me. Slow. Heavy. But I still couldn't see anyone. The footsteps stopped about 10 feet away. Right in front of me. Like someone was standing there. Watching. I couldn't see anything. Just empty space. My radio crackled suddenly. Security said something that still bothers me. He said, "Are you standing there talking to someone?" I felt my stomach drop. I asked what he meant. He said he was watching the camera. And from the camera angle, it looked like I was facing another person, standing directly in front of me. But the strange part was, the camera couldn't show them clearly. It just looked like a dark blur, like something blocking the lens. I turned around and walked out of the garden center. I didn't even finish the shift. The next morning, my manager asked why I left early. I told him everything. He said the cameras showed me standing alone the whole time. No one there, no blur, nothing. Just me, standing in the garden center, facing empty space. But I know what I heard, and sometimes when I shop there late at night, I still avoid that part of the store, because if the doors open again, I don't want to see what's standing there. I used to think overnight shifts at Walmart would be easy money. The store stays open all night where I live, but after about 1 a.m., almost nobody comes in. It's mostly just a few employees stocking shelves, and 1 or 2 customers wandering around half asleep. That night started completely normal. I was working in the electronics section around 2:15 a.m., opening boxers of phone chargers and restocking shelves. The store felt unusually quiet, but that's pretty typical at that hour. You can hear the hum of the refrigerators from the grocery side and the occasional beep from the self-cow machines. Nothing unusual, at least not at first. I remember glancing down the main aisle toward the front of the store and noticing a guy standing near the clothing section. He wasn't shopping, he was just standing there, not moving. At Walmart, that isn't really weird. People wander around at night all the time, so I ignored it and kept working. But about 10 minutes later, I looked up again. He was still there. Same position, same spot, just standing in the middle of the aisle. Something about it started to bother me, but I told myself I was overthinking it. Eventually, I grabbed a cart and pushed it toward the back storage doors to grab more inventory. When I passed the clothing aisle, the guy was gone. Just gone. I knew he walked off while I wasn't paying attention. No big deal. But when I came back out a few minutes later, I saw him again. This time he was standing near the toy section. Completely still, facing the aisle I had just come from. Watching. I slowed down without meaning to. The weird thing was the distance. He had moved across half the store, but I never saw him pass me. And the store was empty enough that I definitely should have. I kept walking, trying to act normal. When I reached electronics again, I casually looked back down the aisle. He was gone again. Now I was starting to feel that weird feeling you get when something doesn't add up. You know that feeling, when your brain keeps trying to find a logical explanation, but nothing quite fits. Around 3 a.m., my manager called me on the radio and asked if I could help bring out a pallet from the back room. I grabbed the pallet jack and started pulling a pallet of boxers toward the door. That's when I heard footsteps behind me. Slow ones. Like someone walking at the exact same pace I was pulling the pallet. I stopped. The footsteps stopped too. I turned around. No one was there. The stockroom was empty, just shelves of inventory and the buzzing fluorescent lights overhead. I stood there for a second, feeling stupid. Probably just the pallet wheels echoing. That's what I told myself. So I pushed the pallet out onto the store floor, and that's when I saw him again. Standing at the end of the aisle. The same guy, same clothes, same posture, completely still. But this time he was closer. A lot closer. Maybe 20 feet away, and he was staring directly at me. I tried to look casual and pushed the pallet toward electronics. But when I reached the end of the aisle and looked back again, he was gone. Just like before. At that point, I was genuinely uneasy. So I walked up to the front and asked the overnight security guard if he had seen a guy wandering around the store. He pulled up the camera feed from the aisle. We both watched the footage from about 15 minutes earlier. You could see me pushing the pallet out of the back room. But the aisle behind me was empty. No one there. Not before. Not after. The security guard rewound it again. Still, nothing. No one ever standing there. No one walking away. Just me. Standing there, looking at something that the camera couldn't see. I finished my shift after that, but here's the part that still bothers me. The next night when I came in for work, my manager casually mentioned something strange. He said a customer had complained the previous week about a man standing motionless in the aisles late at night. They checked the cameras then too. Same result. No one there. But every once in a while during night shift, when I walk past the toy section, I still get the feeling someone is standing behind me. Perfectly still, waiting for me to look back. In my second year of college, I took a job working the overnight shift at Walmart, stocking shelves. It wasn't a bad gig, honestly. The PE was decent, and the night crew was a small, tight-knit group, usually just 8 or 9 of us. The store would close its doors to customers at midnight, and a strange kind of peace would settle over the place. The only sounds were the rumble of pallet jacks on the tile floors and the satisfying rip of cardboard boxers being sliced open. But one night, something happened that still sends a shiver down my spine whenever I think about it. My assignment for the shift was the frozen food section. If you've ever found yourself in one of those aisles late at night, you know it has its own unique atmosphere. Tea, constant. Low hum of the glass freezer doors creates a white noise, and the cold air makes every little sound echo in a weird way. It was around 2 in the morning, and most of the crew was on the other side of the store, working on grocery. I was all alone in the frozen aisle, which wasn't unusual. I had my headphones in, stocking pizzas and ice cream, just trying to get through the night. That's when I noticed something odd. One of the freezer doors was open, and I don't mean just a little ledger, it was swung wide open. My first thought was that another employee must have passed through and just forgot to close it. Annoying, but not a big deal. So, I walked over, shut it firmly, and went back to my pallet of frozen pizzas. About 5 minutes passed, and then I heard it. That soft, suction-like sound a freezer door makes when it opens. I turned around. The very same door was open again. I just stood there for a moment, my mind racing to find a logical explanation. Maybe the seal was bad. Maybe I hadn't pushed it hard enough. So, I marched back over and shut it again, this time giving it an extra hard push to make sure it latched securely. I went back to work, feeling a little unsettled. Not even 2 minutes later, I heard something else. Footsteps. Slow, deliberate footsteps coming down the aisle toward me. Ispunarun, fully expecting to see one of my coworkers, but there was no one. Just the long, empty aisle, with the overhead lights reflecting off the endless row of glass freezer doors. I tried to shrug it off. It's a massive store, and sounds can play tricks on you at night. But when I turned back to the shelf, the freezer door was open again. The exact same. At this point, I'd had enough. I walked down the aisle and checked the narrow hallway behind the freezers where we sometimes moved inventory. It was completely empty. I closed the door one more time and tried to focus on my work, my heart starting to beat a little faster. A few minutes later, my manager's voice crackled over the radio. He asked if anyone had moved the ladder from the frozen section. Prometa told him no. His voice was serious when he replied. He said he was watching the security camera, and he saw the ladder move down the aisle all by itself. I let out a nervous laugh, thinking he was pulling a prank on the new guy, but he didn't laugh back. He said the ladder had rolled a good 10 feet on its own. No one was near it. No one was pushing it. It just moved. That's when I noticed something else. A new, chilling detail. All the freezer doors down the entire length of the aisle were now slightly ajar. Every single one, just open enough for a steady stream of cold air to spill out onto the floor. I started walking slowly down the aisle, closing them one by one, a sense of dread growing with each step. When I got to the very last door at the end of the aisle, I glanced at my reflection in the glass. But I wasn't alone. There was something behind me. Someone standing at the opposite end of the aisle. It was tall, completely still, and it was watching me. I whipped around instantly. The aisle was empty. There was no one there. No sound of footsteps, no movement at all. Just the quiet, familiar hum of the freezers. I grabbed my radio and told my manager I needed help in the frozen section, my voice trembling slightly. 2 of them came down to check things out. We all went to the office to watch the security footage together. The video showed me walking down the aisle, just as I remembered, closing each freezer door. But when I stopped at that last door, the camera caught something impossible. Right there, in the reflection of the glass, behind me was a tall, dark shape, standing right where the aisle began, watching. The truly strange part. In the video, when I spun around, there was nothing there. The aisle was empty. But the reflection of the figure stayed in the glass for a few more seconds before it just faded away. No one ever figured out what it was. Maintenance checked all the freezer doors. They said there was nothing wrong with them. And the ladder, the wheels were locked. It shouldn't have been physically possible for it to move. I quit that job about 2 months later. I just couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. But sometimes, when I find myself in a Walmart late at night, I still avoid the frozen aisle. Because I remember how quiet it gets back there. And if something was standing at the end of that aisle again, you probably wouldn't hear it move. Not until the freezer door opens. Thanks for watching. If you have a spooky story of your own, share it in the comments. And don't forget to subscribe for more. I never believed the woods were watching me until I worked alone up there. I grew up in Appalachia, so being around mountains and trees was normal. I still live here. Same county, same back roads, same routines. I work maintenance for a small utility company, mostly checking lines, clearing fallen branches, inspecting old equipment stations tucked deep in the hills. It's boring work, quiet work, the kind of job where nothing happens most days. That is why I didn't think twice when my supervisor sent me out alone to check an old repeater shed near the ridgeline. I'd been there dozens of times. Gravel road, locked gate, small metal building, in and out. I packed lunch, filled my thermos, and headed up before noon. The drive was normal. Radio static, fog. closing in as the road narrowed. The kind of scenery you stop noticing when you've seen it your whole life. When Primera parked, the first thing I noticed was the silence. No birds, no insects, no wind. Just my engine ticking as it cooled. That happens sometimes, so I ignored it. I unlocked the shed, stepped inside, and started my checklist. Power was stable. No damage. No signs of animals. Everything looked fine. I was halfway through when I heard something outside. Footsteps. Slow. Careful. Crunching leaves. I assumed it was a hiker who'd wandered off trail. That happens too. I stepped back outside and called out, letting them know I was there. No answer. The footsteps stopped. I waited a few seconds, then shrugged it off. Probably a deer. I went back inside and finished my work. When I locked up and turned back toward my truck, I saw fresh footprints in the dirt near the shed. Boot prints. Only one set. They came from the tree line and stopped about 10 feet from the door. No prints going back. I told myself the ground was hard, that maybe they turned around on rock. It made sense if I didn't think about it too long. I ate lunch in my truck. The silence hadn't lifted. No radio signal either, which wasn't unusual up there. But it made the place feel cut off in a way I couldn't explain. When I started driving back down, I noticed something else. Someone was walking along the road ahead of me. Just a figure, far enough away that details blurred in the haze. I slowed, expecting them to step aside. They didn't. They stayed in the middle of the road. I tapped the horn. Nothing. As I rolled closer, my stomach tightened. The person wasn't dressed for hiking. No backpack. No jacket. Just dark clothes that didn't move with the breeze because there was no breeze. Then, without turning around, they stepped off the road and into the trees. No sound. No branches snapping. Just gone. I stopped the truck. Sat there for a full minute, staring at the spot where they disappeared. I didn't get out. I don't know why. I just didn't. I drove the rest of the way down with my jaw clenched, trying to laugh it off. That night, I slept badly. Around 2 a.m. I woke up to a sound outside my house. Something moving along the tree line behind my yard. Slow steps, same rhythm. Heard earlier. I stayed in bed, telling myself it was an animal. Then I heard my name. Not shouted, not whispered. Spoken normally. From outside. I didn't answer. The sound moved closer to the house, around the side, then stopped beneath my bedroom window. I held my breath, staring at the dark glass. Nothing happened. Eventually, I fell asleep. The next morning, I found footprints in the damp ground near the window. Boot prints, only one set. They didn't lead away. They just ended. I called in sick that day, 10 day next. I told myself stress was messing with me. A week later, my supervisor called and asked why I hadn't finished the ridge checks. I told him I had. He paused, then said, that shed hasn't been used in over 10 years. I asked him what he meant. He told me the repeater was decommissioned. No power. No maintenance schedule. No reason anyone should be up there. I checked my paperwork afterward. The work order was gone. No record. No assignment. No GPS log showing I'd been there. But my truck had the mud. My boots still had dried leaves stuck in the treads. And sometimes, late at night when everything goes quiet again, I hear footsteps moving through the trees behind my house. Slow. Careful. Waiting for me to look. I've worked maintenance at a small Appalachian hospital, one of those old brick buildings that has been expanded so many times. The hallways don't quite make sense anymore. Night shift is quiet, peaceful, even mostly paperwork. The occasional call light. fixing things no one else wants to deal with. That night started like every other. I clocked in just before midnight. The halls smelled faintly of disinfectant and old carpet, the kind of smell you stop noticing after a while. I made my first round, checked boiler pressure, made sure the emergency exits were locked. Normal stuff. Around 1:30 a.m., I got a call from the third floor, room 312. The nurse said the call light kept turning itself on. That happens sometimes. Old wiring. Faulty buttons. I grabbed my tools and headed up. The third floor is mostly empty at night. Long stretches of hallway with lights dimmed low. Patient rooms dark and quiet. Room 312 was at the very end. When I stepped inside, the room was empty. No patient. No bed even. Just a cleared out room waiting for renovation. The call light on the wall was glowing red. I turned it off. It clicked off normally. I stood there for a second, listening. The room felt colder than the hallway, but I chalked it up to bad insulation. Old building. As I turned to leave, the call light clicked back on, right behind me. I laughed under my breath. Wiring issue. Easy fix. I opened the panel and checked the connections. Everything looked fine. No loose wires. No corrosion. I shut the panel. The light stayed off. Satisfied, I walked back into the hall. The light came back on immediately. I stood there staring at it longer than I should have. Then I noticed something else. The bathroom door inside the room was slightly open. I was sure it had been closed. I pushed it open fully. Empty bathroom. No movement. No sound. But the mirror above the sink was fogged. Not fully. Just enough to blur the reflection. That made no sense. No one had used the sink. The room was cold. I wiped the mirror with my sleeve. My reflection came into focus. And behind me, someone was standing in the doorway. Ispunaron. The doorway was empty. My heart was racing now. I told myself it was fatigue. Long shifts do that to you. I turned back to the mirror to calm myself. Handprints were forming on the glass from the inside. Slowly. Deliberately. Like someone pressing their palms forward through the mirror. Primera Basquerabai stumbled into the hallway and didn't look back. I called security and told them the third floor had an electrical issue. Didn't mention the mirror, didn't mention the hands. They shut the floor down for the rest of the night. At 4:15 a.m., the call light from room 312 turned on again. This time, every monitor at the nurse's station lit up at once. When morning shift arrived, the lights were off. The room was normal. The mirror was clean. Security footage showed me entering the room alone. But when I stood in front of the mirror, the camera feed glitched. There were two silhouettes reflected behind me. I still work nights. I just don't answer calls from the third floor anymore, because sometimes, when I walk past room 312, the call light is already on, waiting. I stopped hiking that trail after what happened, even though I'd walked it my whole life. I live on the edge of a small Appalachian town where everyone knows everyone, or at least thinks they do. My house backs up to a long stretch of woods that eventually turns into state land. Nothing wild, nothing dramatic, just hills, trees, and old footpaths people have used for decades. Every evening after work, I'd walk the same trail behind my house. It helped me unwind. Same route. Same time. Same sounds. I could do it without thinking. That's why the first thing that felt wrong was how familiar everything still looked. It was late fall. Leaves covering the ground. Air cold enough to sting your lungs a little. I stepped onto the trail just before sunset. Like always, the woods were quiet, but not unusually so. No alarms going off in my head. About 10 minutes in, I noticed the smell. Wood smoke. At first, it was comforting. Someone nearby must have been burning brush or starting a fire. That's normal around here. I kept walking. The smell got stronger. Too strong. Primera slowed down, expecting to see smoke drifting between the trees. Or maybe a glow ahead. There was nothing. No fire. No movement. Just the smell, thick and heavy, sitting in the air. Then I heard footsteps behind me. Not close. Not far. Matching my pace. I stopped. They stopped. I turned around, expecting to see another hiker. The trail behind me was empty. Straight line of dirt and leaves. No place to hide. I waited, feeling stupid for being nervous, then kept walking. The footsteps came back. This time closer. I told myself it was my own echo. Dry leaves can play tricks on you. I even tested it, stopped suddenly, shuffled my feet. The sound behind me didn't copy me. It took one more step after I stopped. Then, nothing. That's when I felt that crawling sensation at the base of my neck. The kind that tells you not to turn around again. I picked up my pace. The trail curves near an old clearing where there used to be a cabin decades ago. Just stones now. I reached the clearing and froze. Someone was standing at the far edge of it, back turned to me. Tall. Still. They were facing the woods, not the trail. Like they were watching something deeper inside. "Hey!" I called out, trying to sound normal. "You all right?" They didn't move. I took a few cautious steps forward. The smell of smoke was overpowering now, burning my nose, but still no fire. "Trail closes soon," I added, "just letting you know." The figure tilted its head slightly. Not toward me. Toward the trees. Then it took one step forward and vanished. Not walked away. Not faded. Just gone. Like someone turned off a light. I stood there longer than I should have. Heart pounding. Telling myself it was low light. Shadows. Fatigue. I eventually turned around and walked back the way I came. Faster than I wanted to admit. Halfway back, I realized something that made my stomach drop. I hadn't heard my footsteps in a while. The ground should have been crunching. Dry leaves everywhere, but it was silent. I stopped. The silence stayed. Then I heard breathing right behind me. Slow. Controlled. Close enough that I could feel warmth on the back of my neck. I didn't turn around. I don't know how long I stood there, but eventually the breathing stopped. When I finally ran, I didn't stop until I reached my yard and slammed my door shut behind me. That night, I smelled smoke inside my house. No fire, no source. Just the smell. I didn't sleep. The next morning, I checked the trail from my porch. From a distance, I could see the clearing. And something else. Fresh footprints in the dirt, only one set. They led from the woods to the clearing, and stopped exactly where I'd been standing when I heard the breathing. I don't walk that trail anymore, but some evenings, just before sunset, I smell smoke drifting through my yard, and somewhere in the trees, something starts walking at my pace.
I didn't think anything strange had happened at first. I work late, so getting home after midnight is normal for me. That night was no different. I parked in my usual spot, locked the car, and walked up to my apartment building like I had hundreds of times before. The hallway lights were on. The elevator worked. Everything felt ordinary enough that I wasn't paying attention. That's probably why it took me a moment to notice the silence. Not quiet silence. No TV sounds through walls. No footsteps above me. No humming from the vending machine near the stairs. Just my shoes against the tile and my own breathing. I remember thinking the building must be asleep early. I reached my floor and walked down the hall. Halfway to my door, I noticed my apartment light was on. That stopped me. I live alone. I'm careful about lights. I stood there for a few seconds, convincing myself I must have left it on by accident. I'd had a long shift. I was tired. That explanation made sense, so I kept walking. My door was locked. That actually reassured me. If someone had been inside, the door would be unlocked, right? I let myself in, turned off the light in the living room, and dropped my bag on the chair. Everything looked normal. Nothing was moved. Nothing missing. I even laughed a little at myself for getting worked up. I went to the kitchen to pour a glass of water. While it was filling, I noticed something small and easy to ignore. The hallway light inside of my apartment was on now. I hadn't turned it on. I stood there, staring at it, hand still on the faucet. Again, my brain rushed to explain it away. Maybe the switch was loose. Maybe I hit it without realizing. I turned it off and finished getting my water. That's when I heard the sound from the bathroom. It was subtle, a faint click, like the plastic shower curtain rings shifting against the rod. I stood still and listened. Nothing else happened. I told myself the building pipes were settling. Old buildings make noise at night. Everyone knows that. Still, I didn't move for a while. I just stood there, holding my glass, listening to my own heartbeat. Eventually, I walked toward the bathroom. The door was open. The light was off. Everything looked exactly the same as it always did. I checked behind the curtain, even though I felt stupid doing it. Nothing there. I turned the light on, then off again, and went to bed. I slept lightly. I kept waking up for no reason. Every time I did, I listened. Around 3 a.m., I woke up because I was sure I heard footsteps. Not loud, just the sound of weight shifting, like someone standing up slowly. I lay there, staring at the ceiling, barely breathing. The sound came again, this time closer, stopped right outside my bedroom door. I told myself it was my upstairs neighbor. Sound travels strangely at night. I'd heard worse before. I rolled onto my side and forced my eyes shut. That's when my phone buzzed. A notification. No sound, just vibration. I checked the screen. It was a motion alert from my old phone, one ID left, plugged in on the living room shelf, months ago. I used it as a basic security camera after a break-in nearby, but I hadn't checked it in weeks. The alert said, "Motion detected, living room." I stared at it for a long time. Then I opened the app. The camera view loaded slowly. Grainy night vision, black and white. The living room was empty. I almost laughed again. False alert. That happens. I was about to close the app when something shifted near the edge of the frame. At first, I thought it was a shadow from the streetlight outside. But the shadow moved against the light. It slid slowly across the wall, stopping just short of the hallway entrance. I couldn't see a shape, just darkness where darkness shouldn't be. The motion alert triggered again. The camera adjusted, and for a single frame, I saw myself standing in the hallway. Same clothes I'd worn to work. Same posture, head slightly tilted, like I was listening. But I was still in bed. The feed froze. The app crashed. I sat up so fast, I felt dizzy. My bedroom door was still closed. The handle didn't move. Nothing touched it. The apartment was silent again. I didn't sleep after that. When the sun finally came up, I checked the living room. The old phone was still on the shelf, plugged in, facing the same direction. The app history showed the motion alerts, but the recordings were gone. That was weeks ago. Nothing like that has happened since. No sounds, no lights turning on, no alerts, but sometimes when I get home late and unlock my door, I pause before going inside. Because once just once I found my shoes by the door, turned slightly toward the hallway, like they'd been moved. And now, every night, before I sleep, I check the camera feed. It always shows an empty room. Except the timestamp is sometimes wrong, by a few minutes, behind real time. I've been living alone in this apartment for about a year now. It's an old building, the kind with creaky floors and pipes that groan at weird hours. I always brushed it off as just old house noises, but lately, things have gotten stranger. It started small. I'd come home from work and find a cabinet door slightly ajar, one I swore I had closed. Or I'd find a book on the floor that had been sitting squarely on my shelf. I told myself I was just tired, forgetful. It's easy to rationalize when you don't want to face something unsettling. Then came the noises. Not the usual groans of the building, but something different. A soft scratching from inside the walls. I have no pets, and I called an exterminator who found absolutely nothing. He said the building was sealed tight. The scratching would start around 3 a.m., always from the same spot in my bedroom wall. It was rhythmic, almost deliberate. One night, I got brave and put my ear against the wall. The scratching stopped the moment my ear touched the drywall. My blood ran cold. I backed away, and after a few minutes, it started again. Last week was when things really escalated. I woke up in the middle of the night, not because of the scratching, but because of a light. The lamp on my nightstand was on. I live alone. I never, ever sleep with a light on. I stared at it, my heart pounding in my chest, trying to come up with a logical explanation. A power surge, faulty wiring. But the switch was physically flipped to the on position. I distinctly remembered flipping it off before I went to sleep. I couldn't move. I just lay there, frozen, until the sun started to rise. The next night, I decided to set up my phone to record while I slept. I propped it up on my dresser, facing the bed and the nightstand. I was nervous, but I needed to know what was happening. Was I sleepwalking? Was I losing my mind? I woke up the next morning feeling exhausted, but the first thing I did was grab my phone. I scrolled through the footage, my hands shaking. For hours, it was just me, sleeping peacefully. And then, around 3:15 a.m., it happened. A shadow, a tall, thin silhouette, slowly moved into the frame from the corner of the room where there's no door or window. It drifted towards my nightstand. The figure was indistinct, like smoke, but it had a form. It reached out a long, wispy arm, and with a slow, deliberate motion, it flipped the switch on my lamp. The room lit up, and the shadow dissolved into the sudden brightness. I haven't slept in my bedroom since. I've been on the couch in the living room, with all the lights on. I don't know what it is, or what it wants, but I know I'm not alone in this apartment. Every time I close my eyes, I see that shadow, and I hear that scratching. I'm not sure what my next step is. Do I move? Do I try to fight it? All I know is that the sun is setting again, and I'm terrified of what the night will bring. Thanks for listening. I'll keep you updated if I can. Stay safe. I took the night shift because it was supposed to be quiet. That's what everyone told me. Less people, less stress, just routine work and long hours of silence. I actually liked the idea. I'm not very social anyway, and the extra pay helped with rent. I work security at a small logistics warehouse on the edge of an industrial area. Nothing special. Trucks come in during the day. At night, it's mostly empty. My job is simple. Check cameras, log any movement, do one walkthrough every hour, and make sure the gates stay locked. My first few weeks were exactly like they said. Boring, predictable, safe. The warehouse is huge. But at night, only one section has lights on, the office area and loading bay 3. The rest stays dark to save power. The camera room is small, warm, and always smells like burnt coffee from the old machine. Most nights, I watch cameras, scroll my phone, and listen to the hum of the air system. Nothing ever happens until about 3 weeks ago. It started small. Camera 12 would flicker sometimes. It points down a long storage aisle stacked with sealed boxes. I told me it was just signal interference, old wiring. I believed them. It never showed anything weird. Then one night, during my 2 a.m. walkthrough, I noticed aisle 12 felt colder than the rest of the building. Warehouses get cold at night. Metal walls, concrete floors. It made sense. I even joked about it in the shift log. But after that, I started noticing other small things. Boxes that look slightly out of place. Not opened, not broken, just not exactly where I remember them being. I told myself it was day shift workers moving stock and not logging it properly. Normal explanation. Then the sounds started. Not loud sounds. Nothing dramatic. Just small ones. Like cardboard sliding. Or plastic wrapping, tightening slowly. Sometimes I'd hear a soft tap. 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 Like something settling. Old building. Temperature changes. Makes sense. That's what I kept telling myself. Then, last Tuesday, I heard footsteps. Not running. Not chasing. Just walking. Slow. Even. Calm. I checked every camera. Nothing. Every aisle. Empty. I even did an extra walkthrough. I found nothing. After that, I started keeping the radio volume higher. Just for background noise. 3 nights later, something else happened. Around 3:17 a.m., camera 12 went static again. But this time, it stayed static for almost 10 seconds. That had never happened before. When the picture came back, nothing looked different. Same boxes, same aisle. But one box, third shelf, from the floor, was rotated slightly. Like someone had turned it to face the camera. I stared at it for a long time. Then, I checked the recording from 5 minutes earlier. It was already turned. I told myself I just hadn't noticed. I wanted to believe that. I really did. After that, I started avoiding aisle 12 during walkthroughs, unless I had to. Then came the smell. Not strong, just faint. Like damp cardboard mixed with something metallic. It only showed up near that aisle. I reported it. Maintenance said maybe a leaking roof panel. It hadn't rained in 2 weeks. Last Friday, everything changed. I was alone, like usual. midnight to 6 a.m. shift. At 2:58 a.m., I heard the footsteps again. This time, closer. Not echoing through metal walls. Not distant. Inside the warehouse. I checked cameras immediately. Nothing. Then my radio made this soft burst of static. Then, breathing. Not loud. Not dramatic. Just slow breathing. Slow. Like someone standing very close to a microphone. I called out on the radio. Asked if anyone else was on site. No answer. Just more breathing and silence. I locked myself in the camera room for about 10 minutes. I'm not proud of that. But something about it felt wrong in a way I can't explain. Eventually, I forced myself to do a walkthrough. Everything looked normal until I got to aisle 12. The lights above it were off. Only that aisle. I don't control those lights individually. I stood there for maybe 30 seconds before walking in. Halfway down the aisle, I heard something behind me. One step. I turned. Nothing there, but the temperature dropped so fast I could see my breath. Then I noticed something on the floor. A security badge. Old style. Not ours. No logo. No photo. Just a magnetic strip and a number scratched into the plastic. The number was my employee ID. Not similar. Exact. I picked it up. It was warm. Like someone had just been holding it. Then every light in aisle 12 turned on at once. Not flickering. Not slowly. Just instant. And every box on both sides was slightly open. Not ripped. Not broken. Just lids lifted. Like something inside had pushed upward. I didn't open any of them. I walked out. Slowly. Calmly. Like if I ran, something would notice. I finished the shift in the camera room. Didn't tell anyone the full story. Just reported lighting fault. Here's the part I can't explain. Yesterday, HR emailed me asking why I used my backup badge at 3:04 a.m. last Friday. I don't have a backup badge. They attached the access log. At 3:04 a.m., employee entry, south emergency exit. That door opens to the outside loading yard. I checked the cameras for that time. The door opened. No one was there, but the sensor clearly triggered. The door pushed outward, like someone left. I put in my 2 weeks notice this morning. They asked why. I told them I found another job. That's not true. I'm still working nights. Just not there. But last night, when I got home, I emptied my pockets onto the kitchen counter. Keys, wallet, phone, and a plastic badge. No logo, no photo. Just a scratched number. My employee ID. I threw it in the trash outside. This morning, it was back on my kitchen table. I live alone. And tonight, my new job starts at 11 p.m. Night shift. Security. Different building. Same company. Same system. And an hour ago, I got an automated email welcoming me to the facility. Attached was my access profile. 2 badges registered under my name. 1 active. 1 already in use. You know, the weirdest part is that for the first few weeks, absolutely nothing happened on my night shifts. And honestly, that's what made everything that came later so much worse. I work as a night janitor in a private medical office building. It's not a hospital, just a collection of specialist clinics. You know, dentists, dermatologists, one small lab. After 10 o'clock at night, the entire place is empty, except for me and a remote security operator who watches the cameras from another city entirely. My job is simple. I take out the trash, mop the floors, disinfect all the surfaces, and lock the internal doors. It's routine. It's quiet, predictable. And I really liked that. The building itself is modern. The hallways are bright white. There are motion-activated lights everywhere. Automatic doors. Everything feels controlled and safe. My shift starts at 11 p.m. By midnight, I'm usually up on the 3rd floor, which houses the dermatology clinic and a few storage rooms. Nothing interesting ever happens up there. For the first month, it was perfect. It's me, my music, and the quiet hum of the building. Then, small things started to happen. The motion lights in hallway C would sometimes turn on before I even got close to them. At first, I just figured it was a sensor delay, or maybe I was just walking faster than I realized. A few nights later, I noticed the lights behind me were shutting off faster than usual. It was like the building was in a hurry to get the darkness back as soon as I passed through. Still explainable, I told myself. Then came the elevator. It's programmed to park on the 1st floor at night to save energy. Every single person who works there, day or night, told me that. But twice, I came out of the supply closet and saw it just sitting there on my floor, floor 3, with the doors wide open. No one was inside. I started taking the stairs after that. Next was the smell. It was this sharp, antiseptic scent, but way stronger than normal. It was almost like the sterile air you'd find in an operating room. And it only ever happened right near exam room 3B. I asked the day staff if they stored anything special in there. They just looked at me funny and said it was empty, waiting on the list for renovation. I checked it out myself one night. They were right. It was completely empty, almost too empty. There wasn't a speck of dust, no leftover marks on the walls from old equipment. It was just clean, pristine, like it had never even been used. I was mopping the floor outside of 3B at around 2:40 in the morning when I heard a movement from inside. It wasn't loud, just a faint sound, like chair legs sliding slightly on the floor. I froze. I just stood there, listening. Silence. The room was empty. Lights were off. Perfectly clean. But the air felt warm, like someone had just been standing in there. I locked it again and went back to my work, trying to shake it off. Then, around 3:10 a.m., my work phone buzzed. It was security. They asked if I was cleaning inside exam room 3B. I said no. I hadn't gone back in since I checked it earlier. I kind of laughed it off, said it was probably another sensor glitch. They didn't laugh back. They just asked me to go check it anyway. I really didn't want to. My stomach was in a knot, but it's my job, so I did. The door was still locked, just as I'd left it. I unlocked it, pushed it open, and the lights flickered on automatically. The room was empty, but this time, the exam chair was fully reclined. I am 100% positive it was upright earlier. I know this because I remember specifically leaning my mop handle against the back of it, and now it was laid all the way back, flat, like it was waiting for a patient. I backed out of the room. I told security over the phone that it was probably just loose hydraulics or something. They just said, okay, but their voice was quiet, too quiet. 2 nights later, it got worse. It was about 3 a.m., and I was in a supply closet restocking paper towels. That's when I heard it. The clear, unmistakable ding of the elevator arriving on my floor. I peeked out into the hallway. The elevator doors were open. I walked slowly towards it, my heart pounding in my chest. Inside, there was a wheelchair. We don't have wheelchairs in this building. It was facing the back wall, and it was empty. I just stood there, staring at it. I didn't touch it. I immediately called security. They were adamant. No one had entered the building. No deliveries, no staff, no patients. They asked me to just push the wheelchair back inside the elevator and send it down to the first floor. I did not want to touch that thing, but again, it's my job. I walked up to it, and when I put my hands on the handles, they were warm, not room temperature warm. They were body warm. I quickly pushed it into the elevator, hit the button for floor 1, and watched the doors slide shut. That should have been the end of it. But when I turned around, the door to exam room 3B was open. I know I locked it. The lights inside were on. I walked closer, slow and careful, peering inside. The exam chair was upright again, but now there was a fresh sheet of paper pulled across it, just like they do for a patient, and on the little metal tray table right beside it, there was a single white hospital wristband. There was no hospital logo on it, no name, just a printed label. It read, patient name, cleaning staff. Time, 3:12 a.m. I left the building early that night. I didn't even finish my shift. I just called my supervisor and told him I was sick. I didn't go back for 3 days. Yesterday, they called and asked if I had quit. I told them I needed 1 more shift to decide. So tonight, I went back. Everything looked normal. Too normal. The silence felt heavy. At 2:55 a.m., I passed by exam room 3B. The door was closed. Lights were off. Everything was fine. Then, at 3:12 a.m. exactly, all the hallway motion lights turned off at once. Complete, total darkness. It only lasted for maybe 3 seconds. When they flickered back on, the door to exam room 3B was wide open. I didn't go inside this time. I didn't even hesitate. I turned around, walked straight to the exit, clocked out, and left. I'm quitting tomorrow. But here's the part I can't explain. The part that's making it hard to breathe right now. When I got home tonight, I emptied my pockets onto my kitchen counter.
No.
My keys,
Also.
my phone, my work gloves, and a plastic wristband. White. No hospital name. Just printed text. Patient name. Cleaning staff. Next appointment. Tonight. 3:12 a.m.
चलने हैं थोड़ी देर तक.
I didn't think anything was wrong with that apartment. Even now, I'm not sure when it actually started. I moved into the place because it was cheap. Too cheap, honestly. But I work late shifts and just needed somewhere quiet to sleep during the day. The building was old, but not abandoned. Old, just tired. Like it had been standing longer than it wanted to. My unit was on the second floor. Small living room, tiny kitchen, one bedroom, one bathroom, and a hallway closet with sliding mirror doors. Normal place. First 2 weeks were completely fine. Then one small thing happened. My bathroom light turned on by itself. I figured loose wiring, old building, happens. Then it happened again the next night and again. Always around 2:30 a.m. I started turning the breaker off before bed. That fixed it. Or I thought it did. One night I woke up around 3 a.m. The bathroom light was on. Breaker was still off. I told myself maybe I flipped the wrong switch earlier. I didn't check. I didn't want to. After that, I started sleeping with my bedroom door closed. Then came the mirror. The hallway closet has 2 sliding mirror doors. When you walk from bedroom to kitchen, you pass right by it. One night, coming back from the bathroom, I noticed something weird in the mirror. The hallway looked slightly darker than it actually was. Like the reflection had less light than reality. I tested it the next morning. Normal, perfect reflection. I told myself it was just being half asleep. Then, I started noticing something else. Sometimes, when I walked past the mirror, quickly, it felt like my reflection moved a fraction of a second late. Not much, just enough to make my stomach drop. Then, about a month after moving in, my neighbor upstairs moved out suddenly. I only met him once. Quiet guy. Worked nights too. The landlord said he moved for a new job. But the apartment stayed empty for weeks. Then one night, around 1:40 a.m., I heard footsteps above me. Slow pacing, back and forth. I recorded it on my phone. Next morning, I asked the landlord if someone moved in upstairs. He said, no, still empty. I showed him the recording. He just said, old buildings make noise. That night, I wore headphones to sleep. At around 2:50 a.m., I woke up anyway. Because it was too quiet. Like the kind of quiet where you can hear your own blood moving. Then I heard something inside my apartment. Not loud, just fabric sliding from the hallway near the mirror closet. I stayed in bed for maybe 5 minutes, listening. Nothing. Finally, I got up, opened my bedroom door. Hallway lights were off, but the closet mirror looked like someone had touched it. You know when skin leaves faint streaks on glass? There were hand marks, 2 of them, at chest height, from the outside, facing in. Like someone had been standing in my hallway, touching the mirror. I live alone. I cleaned it, didn't think about it. Next night, they were back. Same position, same height. Then, one morning, I woke up late for work. Rushed out of bedroom, past the mirror, and for just a second, I saw someone standing behind me in the reflection. I turned instantly. No one there. I laughed, nervous. Told myself, brain glitch. But I stopped using the hallway light after that. Then, last week, something happened I can't explain. I came home around midnight. Apartment felt warm. Not temperature warm. Occupied warm,
फिलहाल तो
Like
कोई
when
नहीं
someone
काटेंगे सारे
has
टास्क
been
ही।
inside a room recently.
रिपीट
I checked everything. Doors locked,
मैं
windows
तरीका
locked,
तकिया जाके
nothing
बंदे
missing.
वीडियो छुड़ाई हुई सी
Then I noticed the closet mirror
जो
was
मर्जी
slightly
करो।
open. Sigh slitted an inch. I never open it. Inside is just coats and storage boxes. I closed it, went to bed at exactly 2:31 a.m. I woke
साढ़े
up
सौ सोने
to a
का
noise,
टाइम
like breathing, not loud, not aggressive, just breathing from the hallway. I grabbed my phone, turned flashlight on, opened bedroom door. Hallway empty,
लाइव तक नहीं
but mirror closet was open about a foot now. I know I closed it earlier. I walked slowly toward it, light shaking in my hand. I slid the mirror door open. Inside, everything looked normal. Coats, boxes, shoes. Then my phone light hit the back wall, and I saw something scratched into the paint from the inside. 3 lines, like tally marks, then 3 more under it, like someone was counting days. I slammed it shut, went back to bedroom, locked the door, stayed awake until morning. Yesterday, I packed most of my stuff. I'm moving out this weekend. Tonight is my last night here, and I was feeling okay about it until about 10 minutes ago. I was brushing my teeth, getting ready for bed, and I heard the closet door slide open. Slow, deliberate. I didn't go check. I just turned off the bathroom light, came to my bedroom, locked the door, got into bed. I'm writing this right now, and I can hear it. Not loud, not aggressive, just slow sliding. Back and forth. Back and forth. Like something inside is trying to decide if it wants to come out tonight or wait until after I fall asleep. This was supposed to be a good thing, a gift. My girlfriend's parents let us use their cabin for our anniversary last month. I think they bought it at an estate sale a few years ago. It's deep in the woods, no neighbors, no Wi-Fi, and the cell service is a joke. Perfect for us. We just wanted to disconnect for a weekend. The place was rustic, but clean. It smelled like pine and dust. On the mantelpiece, tucked between a kerosene lamp and a stack of old magazines, was a guest book. It was a thick, leather-bound volume with yellowed pages. Anna, my girlfriend, loves that kind of stuff. She opened it immediately. The first entries were from the 70s. Happy families on fishing trips. Couples on romantic getaways. The handwriting was loopy and cheerful. The kids loved the lake. Perfect escape from the city. We'll be back. We spent the first evening reading them out loud, laughing at the dated slang. It was charming. Then we found the first strange entry. It was from 1988. The handwriting was different. It was small, spidery, and looked like it had been written in a hurry. The nights are too long here, it said. The woods are too close. I keep hearing things. A scratching sound that moves around the walls. He says it's just branches, but it's not. It feels like something is trying to find a way in. I want to go home. It wasn't signed. We just stared at it for a minute. Someone had a bad trip, I said. trying to make a joke. Anna didn't laugh. She just closed the book. Later that night, I was woken up by a noise. A dry, scraping sound. It came from outside, near the back of the cabin. I lay perfectly still, listening. It was rhythmic. Scrape, drag, scrape. An animal, I told myself. A raccoon or a porcupine. It went on for about a minute, then stopped. The silence that followed felt heavier than before. The next morning, Anna was quiet. I found her with the guest book open again. "Look," she said, her voice low. She pointed to another entry, this one from 1995. "Heard it again last night. It was on the roof, this time. I hate the windows in this place. It feels like you're in a fishbowl." This one was also unsigned. We started looking through the book more carefully. Every 5 or 6 years, there was another one. An entry written in that same panicked, rushed tone. They all mentioned the same things. A scratching sound, the feeling of being watched, and a strange fixation on the windows. The last one we found was just a single sentence, scribbled diagonally across a page from 2011. It knows our names. I'd had enough. It was starting to feel less like a fun historical record and more like a collection of bad moments. I took the book from Anna. "This is ridiculous," I said. "We're letting a bunch of ghost stories ruin our weekend." To prove my point, I grabbed a pen, flipped to the next blank page, and wrote in my most confident handwriting, "Anna and I are having a wonderful time for our anniversary. The only scary thing here is the lack of cell service." I signed both our names at the bottom. Anna was upset. "Why would you do that?" she asked. I told her it was just a book, that we were making our own happy memory, not buying into someone else's paranoia. That night, the scratching started almost as soon as we turned the lights off. It wasn't faint this time. It was loud, insistent. It wasn't in one place. It was everywhere at once. On the walls, the roof, the floorboards beneath us. Sounded like a dozen animals, all trying to claw their way in. I couldn't pretend it was branches anymore. I got up and checked the door. The deadbolt was thrown. I looked through the peephole and saw nothing but blackness. The scraping stopped. I stood there in the living room, my heart pounding in the sudden, absolute silence. My eyes fell on the guest book, still sitting open on the coffee table. I don't know why, but I walked over to it. I looked at the panicked entry from 1988, the one about the scratching. For the first time, I noticed on the page right before it, a happy, cheerful entry. It was from a family on a fishing trip. I read the names they signed at the bottom. Then I flipped back to the terrified, unsigned entry. It wasn't unsigned. At the very bottom, almost torn through the page, were the same names. My blood went cold. I started flipping back and forth. A happy entry from a newlywed couple in '94. 2 pages later, the terrified entry from '95 about the roof and the windows. The same names. A cheerful family vacation in 2010.
Oh.
A few pages later, the scribbled scrawl from 2011. It knows our names, same family. It's a logbook. It's a sequence. I'm writing this on my phone. The battery is at 4%. The scratching hasn't started again, but I don't think it will. I keep looking at the last entry in the book. My entry. My confident, stupid words. My name and hers. The page after it is blank and clean. It feels like it's waiting. I just heard a single sharp tap on the glass of the window right behind me. My grandfather left me his cabin. I hadn't seen him in over a
घंटा
decade.
घंटा भी जाने से live
So when the
video
lawyer called, I was surprised. He wasn't a warm man. My only memories of him are of a quiet, stern figure who smelled of sawdust and coffee. The cabin was his whole world, a small, hand-built box in the middle of 100 acres of pine trees. He died there. The official report said he fell off the roof while cleaning the gutters, an accident. I drove up last weekend to see the place for myself. It was exactly as I remembered. Dark wood, a stone chimney, and an unnerving number of windows. Of his life. Everything was coated in a thin layer of dust.